Now, one of the best things you can learn in digital photography is retouching. This is going to kind of boost your creativity beyond all belief. There are always going to be things in your photos that you look at and you go, oh goodness me, I completely missed that. Maybe a sign or a wire sticking out of somebody's head, or maybe just something that annoys you, or maybe something about their facial appearance. You can think, wish I'd done hair and makeup. In this guy's case, just makeup, I think, because he hasn't got any hair. All that kind of stuff. So the good thing about Photoshop Elements is it's just full of very cool and very powerful and sophisticated tools for us to fix our pictures. Yes, it's true, people don't actually look like that on front covers of magazines. They've all been photoshopped. And that's now the ubiquitous term, isn't it? Have you been photoshopped? Generally, if you're a newspaper photographer or a journalist, you shouldn't really Photoshop stuff too much. You can pull back some of the brightness and contrast and the color to try and make it as real as you remember it. But removing things or adding things to a picture is strictly a no-no. But as an illustrator or as an amateur photographer, you can do anything you like. Even if you're a professional photographer, you can retouch stuff, you can put in a herd of wildebeest in the background, but you will have to probably call it a photo illustration as opposed to a photograph, which has more documentary connotations. Enough talk. There are 2 or 3 fantabulous tools in this program. One is called the healing brush, one is called the spot healing brush, another is called the clone brush. We're going to look at the spot healing brush first because that's the easiest to use, and I'm going to pick on this fella here. He actually doesn't really need retouching much, but he's got a couple of little blemishes on his face, and we're going to try that out. It's not a terribly high resolution picture either, but never mind. Alright, so what does the spot healing brush look like? It actually looks like this. It looks like a band-aid with a kind of, how do you describe that, little sort of dotty sign around it. So if we click on that, up pops the options bar, and you can see it shares real estate with the healing brush, and I'll explain the difference in a moment. So spot healing brush, gee whiz, what do you do with that? Well, first off, all retouching requires you to zoom in a little bit, and here's where we can use a fantastic little feature here called the navigator. The navigator looks like this, and funnily enough, as the name suggests, allows me to navigate around the image. So for example, rather than having to scroll, I can just grab the red rectangle and go right down to his elbow, up to his eyes. Very, very good. It's a very cool little feature. You can also zoom in and zoom out using the slider on the navigator. I tend to prefer to use the control or command plus and minus, but there are a number of different ways of doing it. Okay, let's get there and fix him up. So another key feature to use in all retouching is, number 1, zoom in, blow the picture up so you can see what you're doing. Number 2, use the square brackets. Gee whiz, what are they? They're next to P on the keyboard. I had to look down at the keyboard to make sure I was telling you the right thing. They're next to P on the keyboard. And what these do is make the brush, that's that circular thing, go smaller on the left or bigger on the right. The idea with this tool is kind of get the size of the brush just a bit bigger. Wow, look at that. Just a bit bigger than the spot or the blemish that you want to get rid of. It is very, very good for getting rid of pimples, inconsistencies in skin, that kind of thing. So look, I've done almost nothing to this guy, but now he's looking absolutely fantastic. Okay, I can even click and drag down this little smile line and let go, and it sort of gets rid of it. If I Control Z, undo, yeah, it sort of gets rid of it. Like that. Smudges it out. So very, very powerful tool, and that's the spot healing brush. There's another little blip there. Just on his neck, just a little shaving cut there. Fantastic. So, very quickly we can fix him up, make him look fantastic. Okay, that is the spot healing brush. So as the name suggests, it's pretty cool. I have to say, when I saw this demonstrated with Photoshop 7, I think when it came out, there was a stampede to the back of the hall to buy it, because all those people who were sort of selecting and copying and pasting and then blending and using opacity, it kind of took forever to retouch a portrait. This was just like the bee's knees. This was just like heaven on a stick. And so, Adobe, I don't think, actually brought enough boxes to sell on the night because, they hadn't realized what a reaction this was going to have. So here's a photograph of a model we use sometimes. She really into the kind of 50s look, and what we're going to do is just a very quick retouch job on her, again using that exact same brush, the clone, or rather the spot healing brush, and you can see very quickly just a few little blemishes. Now, the key thing when you're doing, and I'm being very naughty here, is if your model, male or female, or your pet dog or whatever you're doing has like moles and freckles and stuff, natural imperfections, I don't know, the natural characteristics, don't remove them, because if you do, it is no longer that person. If they have pimples, shaving cuts, unsightly hair, the stuff that you don't really like, yes, get rid of them. But freckles, which is I'm doing here, it's not a good idea, because people are going to look at the picture and go, nah, that's not her at all. No, different. The Mandy that I know has freckles all over her face. But you can see here, while I'm talking, I've taken 20 seconds just to get rid of some of those blemishes off here. Very, very quick. This is the before version, that's the after version. So there's another tip number 3. Duplicate your layers so that you can always undo, or rather turn off, the top layer to see the original. Just see how you're going. Okay, and again, with this tool, I can just go zip like that, and bingo. You see, now it's changing the characteristics of a face a little bit by getting these lines out of the way. Probably not a good idea to do too much of that, but I'm just going to proceed. Now, what is the difference between this brush and that brush? So the spot healing and the healing brush. The spot healing brush, when I click it and hold it, it looks around the circle and takes pixels and tonality from outside of that circle, puts them in the middle. The healing brush, on the other hand, has to be told where to look. So this is ideal, for example, if I'm doing some healing along the line of the eyelash, or the eye. Let's just zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so if I'm going to try and retouch along here, what it's going to do is kind of smudge, and it's not kind of very nice. Around the lip line, for example, let's just say a little bit along the lip line like that, it's going to smudge, and it's almost like you've dropped a drop of water onto a watercolor painting, and it goes, and sort of dribbles into it. So we need to be a bit more specific, and then I'd use the healing brush tool. This only works if you hold the Alt/Option key down. So Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC. So then I need to go off and find some suitable skin, and this is an amazing tool because it copies texture. It doesn't copy tonality. So if I do this, I'm going to go and choose very smooth patch of skin there and click once, let go, and then move over here. Now you can see the area of skin, let's just try down here, the area of skin I'm going to paste onto, which is down here, is a different color. So I'm going to click once, and I'm holding the mouse down so you can see the cross is where it's coming from, the circle is where it's going to, and I let go. Bang, wow. Click again, bang, wow. You get this sound effect with everything. So what we're seeing here is it not only copies from a predetermined or pre-allocated location on the face, and I'm going to hold the Option key down again and just click up here, but it copies the texture of the skin and then neutralizes it to be exactly the same density. So let me show you. Here are some pores that you can see, and I'm going to copy and paste over here, bang, and then you can see the pores. So it's copied the pores. I'm going to do this again over in this dark area, so I can rub it around. It's going to change that light patch to match the outlying area, i.e. it's going to darken the area, but you're still going to get the pores there. So it copies the texture and matches the tonality. It's a fantastic tool. Really, really good tool. Here's my old mate Fidel Castro showing off here, and you can see here, particularly, this is a little picture. I never took a picture of him. This is a picture I stole off the internet, and that's why it's horrible in low resolution. But I can again Alt-click and move it over here, and it's going to copy that texture. Okay, so it's very, very handy if you want to copy a bit of texture, and it's just amazing because it then just matches the color. How cool is that? So the person, I was going to say the guy, but it could very well be a lady, who invented the code for this is an absolute blooming genius, because it is absolutely amazing. And that is the spot healing brush and the healing brush. Now, tip, make sure you use a brush setting, and in fact they choose you here. They don't actually give you much in an alternative. Make sure you have a brush setting which is quite hard, i.e. it's not a fuzzy brush. It seems to work best with a hard-edged brush. Now I've been busy with Fidel here, as we can see. I'm just going to move the navigator palette out of the way, and we're going to shrink it down in size. I've been very busy with this guy. Here's the version I did before the show. So I'm going to turn off that top version. There you go. So even getting rid of some of the bags under his eyes and the wrinkles on his face, you can actually set him back 20 years. You can make him look 20 years younger if you wanted to do that. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he'd want another 20 years ruling the roost down there in Cuba, but may not happen. There we go. So again, we can just finish copy and pasting on his face like that. Absolutely fantastic. Now let's say you've taken this picture, you're a famous press photographer, and your editor says, hey, that's fantastic, I don't like the hand has to go, and you think, oh my goodness, what am I going to do here? Well, we just clone it out. Okay, yeah, okay, new concept here. Clone tool. The clone tool looks like this little rubber stamp. S is the keyboard shortcut, and we have two iterations of it. We have the clone stamp and we have the pattern stamp. We won't touch on the pattern stamp at the moment because it kind of puts a pattern or a texture into the picture, so it can get you a little confusing. But what we want to do is use the clone stamp tool. Clone stamp tool works in a similar way to the healing brush tool, except for the fact that it is a literal cloning. It's a literal retouching tool. And what I mean by that is it literally copies what you select. So again, if I just click, it's going to malfunction. I have to first hold the Option key down, Alt key on a PC, click once to choose some nice blue sky, move it to the left in this case, and you can see it actually brings a little bit of blue sky with it. It's very, very fuzzy and faint because I'm using a very fuzzy brush. Tip number 3 or 4, use a diffuse brush with the cloning stamp tool, the clone stamp tool, because that covers up the fact that you've been up to no good retouching stuff. Okay. Tip number 5, I think we're up to now, is reset by holding the Alt/Option key down multiple times. Reset where you copy from, because otherwise you may get into trouble like this and you get the extra beard, which is not very good. So I have to reset and choose from another part of the image like this. I can hold the mouse down and continuously do it, but you'll find what it'll do is it'll start pasting in extra microphones because it still doesn't know where the cross is. It still doesn't know that you've actually painted it out, because Photoshop is making multiple versions of this image as we clone it out. So we need to then click, 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 and it'll reset each time. Here we go. Right, so we're making a pretty good job of keeping my editor happy because he didn't want the microphone. And there we go. It's gone. How cool is that? We can also demote the great lead very easily. And you can pretty much do anything you like in terms of removing, replacing, or covering up stuff. We can even demote the guy here. As I'm going to show you here, I would use the clone stamp tool and need to go up to the lapel here and select a bit of lapel. And you notice here that a lot of the stuff that I do, I tend to zoom in quite a lot. Don't forget with the clone stamp tool, you can actually work at a lower opacity. So every time I click, for example, in this occasion, I'm only going to transfer 53% of the image. So you have to basically click, click, click a little bit harder. But you actually get, as you can see here, slightly smoother, he says hopefully slightly smoother looking clone result. And that's another way of making your retouching look highly professional, just to make it slightly smoother. I've gone a little bit fuzzed over the sky a bit, so I'm going to go back here, go back up to 100%. I'm going to choose a slightly smaller brush, excuse me, and then I'm going to just clone around here just to get that furry bit off his shoulder. There we go, and go back to 0, and pretty much got rid of his rank, which I'm sure he's going to be totally unhappy about. Okay, moving on. Here's another picture. This time it's of a bird, which we're going to just cover up some of the rocks and boulders around its. So in past versions of Photoshop Elements, we used to have a thing called the patch tool, which is quite good. It seems to have disappeared in version 12. Bring it back. But what I will say is you don't really need it, simply because we can select a lump of the ground using a selection tool. Dead easy. And I'm going to use a very simple one. I'm just going to use, actually I'm going to use this one, the quick selection brush, simply because I want to do it very quickly. And I'm going to select a chunk of ground like that, because I want to cover up that big rock in the opposite corner. So I've selected it just approximately, and I'm going to use the Edit Copy, Edit Paste, or Control Command C, Control Command V. And you've hit the right track when it does it, because it appears in the image. You can see a new layer has appeared there, and of course I drag it from the right over to the left. Kind of doesn't really fit, does it? So I need to press Control or Command T to transform it, and then right click, and I'm going to say flip that layer horizontally, so it just turns it around and gets it facing the other way, and then I can just slide it down into place click the green button, and I've actually added a little bit to the nest on the opposite side. How kind of me. And we've created absolute fantastic sort of camouflage job. Another way to do it, again, to get everything to fit in here, I'm going to try and cover up a couple of these lumps in the background by choosing, again with the selection tool, some of the real estate right up in the back of the... Now, this is a little bit of a different exercise simply because the back of the picture is completely out of focus. So we need to take that into account, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a selection like this. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit of selection like this. So that's actually no good because it's a square selection, so it's going to look really weird if I copy it and paste it. You know, it's going to look really, really weird. So clearly I need to feather. Feathering is, you know, our best weapon in this respect. So again, I'm going to select that area like that. Then I'm going to go up and select feather, and depending on the relationship or the resolution, 60 megabytes, I'll just try something like 22 and click OK. Then copy and paste again, and you can see it's a lot easier for me to fix it up or cover it up. The giveaway, of course, is I've selected right up to the edge, and so I've got two soft edges and two hard edges, which again kind of defeats the point. So I need to come back and do it again. But this time pay a little bit more attention. So I'm just going to freehand it this time, just using my amazing lasso power. So again, copy and paste it, use the move tool. Oh, hey, that now works pretty well. I've still got a tiny bit of a hard edge, but that's pretty good. And guess what? I can duplicate that layer and just shove it over there to hide that bit there. And I'm just going to do that little layer flipping trick. Okay, and click OK. And you would never know, there's a tiny bit of a blemish there, so I'm going to go over that with the eraser brush, set to brush and nice and fuzzy. Remember, fuzzy is always very, very good. And I can just erase that hard edge there just so that nobody goes, oh, what's that funny straight edge in the back of the picture? And you would never know the difference. Okay, turn those off, and you can see what we've done here. We've just covered up stuff in the background using a very simple selection, feathering, copying and pasting, and then finally to fine tune it we've used the eraser tool just to get rid of some of the hard edges which give away the fact that we've been up to no good in the background. Well done. That's pretty much all covering retouching. As I say, you can retouch anything from tiny little blemishes using the clone and the clone brush and the healing brush, anything to really large areas simply by selecting other parts of the picture, copying and pasting them on top.